I do believe that blockchain and Web3 hasn't really had its killer app yet. And I firmly believe that asset tokenization, in its final stage, any asset under the sun available, accessible in the palm of your hand is that killer app.
So I think actually we're getting there really from an infrastructure, wallet perspective. Onboarding is almost not flawless, but it's getting really, really good. Like for example with Sky Mavis, we just released an update to our own wallet, which now enables people to create their own unit, like very easy onboarding. So they can now just create with their social login, then they get a seedless, keyless wallet, non-custodial. I think there's a lot of people who have something like that. So these type of problems are solved, but what we really need is great consumer-facing products and the economies to work. So in gaming, for example, which is my industry, a lot of games getting released, but a lot of unfortunate games that don't have great economic understanding, so that the games just crash really fast. So I would say, like from a gaming perspective, we need higher quality, but a lot better economic understanding for the game developers. And we are a game publisher as well, so we invest in many different game studios. We want to partner with the best founders, but what we look for in particular is experience with MMOs, and even Chinese MMOs, right? Because they're used to building these very complex game economies, and that's kind of what you need in Web3 gaming as well, but then you need to slim it down one step at a time to build out a really strong economy, and then find time to do that. But unfortunately, we're not quite there yet, but I predict like in the next 1 to 2 years, we'll get there.
What's nice now, because now Chiliz became a layer 1, so since a year, more or less a year, we became a layer 1, an EVM layer 1. Chiliz is not the fastest, not the biggest, doesn't want to change the world, just wants to be the sports and entertainment blockchain. Now, we do have projects that are joining the chain, has nothing to do with us, and that's us being Chiliz historically, or socials.com and everything. You have, for example, the French League One that launched a fantasy game where you have NFTs for all the players and all the teams. This is on the Chiliz chain. And you have the Volleyball Federation in Brazil, who just minted 100,000 or 300,000, not sure, NFTs for their federation on the Chiliz chain. So we are trying to create and incentivize as well sometimes sports property to join this and create this ecosystem. We just announced 2 weeks ago in Korea, for me at least, one of our biggest achievements, which is Naver, the biggest internet company in Korea, launching in their app where they have 33 million users and 18 million daily active users. They just launched a Naver Pay wallet, which is only for sports and entertainment and only with the Chiliz chain. It's a non-custodial wallet, it's directly there. And any Korean users now can mint for free an NFT that gives them a right to attend a match in PSG or AC Milan or FC Barcelona. Point here is, it's not only just about Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and all of the other things. It's not just about DeFi, financial tokenization of financial product. There is so many other utility. And I think, and I hope that what we're doing for the last 6 years and a half is one good example. Definitely not infrastructures. I think right now in the space, there is way too many money invested in infrastructure. It's very frustrating for me as an entrepreneur because all the money is about creating a new token for a new infrastructure. What's missing is more money for application, for product that people hopefully will want at some point, and spending marketing dollars for these apps. So I think one of the biggest, I don't know if it's a mistake or not in the space, is there is so much money, that's great, but it's poorly allocated in the wrong verticals. And right now what's missing is money going into apps, into developers that will develop B2C, consumer-facing apps that will appeal to users. We are missing utility, we are missing something to do with your tokens. So sure, in our case, of course, as Chiliz and the fan tokens, if you own a fan token of the team, you can vote on decision of the club, you can win tickets or earn or redeem tickets for your favorite team. But what can you do in many other apps that are just about finance? So when you look at the space, every day there is a new, not every day, but every month at least, there is a major chain joining the ecosystem, the space. Very, very well funded, and the money will be used to poach other projects from other chain that are in the DeFi space, in the finance, etc. Great, but you don't create value, you just redistribute value in the same in the industry. And so what's missing is more, I don't really believe in app chain, but more vertical chain, industry chain. In our case, Chiliz is the sports and entertainment blockchain, but we need more of that.
I think we just need a mega hit out of a game. Obviously, there is some bias. We're building a Web3 gaming product, a kind of a metaverse-centered product. What I genuinely believe, though, is that entertainment products and gaming products are a catalyst for mass adoption of crypto systems. And we have yet to see that. I think people that are very interested in trading or DeFi systems coming online, there's been an element of culture that's been introduced through NFTs that I think is very powerful. So adding art and collectability, but even that, there are underpinnings of people interested in trading or speculating on NFTs to flip those for profit at some point. And so, we're starting to see kind of a blurring of the lines between culture and finances and crypto. I genuinely do think, though, that a mainstream game or a game that would be attractive to a mainstream audience is something that could appeal to the masses and really be a catalyst for future growth.
So we are a very pioneering industry, and I think one of the components of the economy of the future. As with innovation and deep tech movements, we come with solutions to problems, right? But as you go through the process, we realize that you need to build the foundations for it. And I mean, the space has been relevant for the outside world since 10 years plus. I think now we are still, but finally at, clearing the infrastructural challenges that Web3 poses. And so going back to how do you use a wallet without letting the user, having a frictional UX, or how can you keep your assets safe, or things like this. And obviously it has different ramifications for different industries, but a couple of examples can be DeFi, right? DeFi has gone, so many chains, so many ecosystems, kind of plug and play, and then now we're trying to, defragment, right? And that's one example, and that's what we're doing now. On the other side, gaming is a perfect example because gaming is a huge opportunity, and community-wise, it's clear how if we crack that bridge between getting gamers to come to Web3, it will be huge for everyone. But at the same time, they're very particular culture, and how do you embed Web3 in a game without creating frictions is something that we still need to clear.
That's a big question. I don't know the answer, to be honest. For me, is doing everything possible, not from a technology perspective, but coming up with a really good philosophy, because everything can't start with a philosophy, right? Religion, cultures, you have to start with something. So at Openmesh, we start with the 10 Commandments. It's like a Bible. That gives like a lot of context, non-technical. People will translate that into something that they believe to be true. And then you have to have a really nice support ecosystem to actually obey, at least, obey is the wrong word, maybe at least support that mission. It's a mission-oriented initiative, so therefore, in our space, we need like good foundational philosophies. If people support those philosophies, that will translate into an innovation or a breakthrough, eventually will somehow adopt by, decent amount of people.
I think perhaps we need realistic expectations as to what are the use cases for this industry. I think a lot of the expectations of like hyper adoption have been overhyped, and they are very deep use cases like stores of values, payments, collectibles. They're very important, but I think it'll take some time. Now, I could give the default answer. Like people will say, "Oh, we need better UX," but the truth is, we have a lot of good UX already. So perhaps I will say, in the finance space, regulatory changes would be quite helpful. I would say a lot of regulations today prevent people from building useful things on top of chains, and with a better understanding from the part of regulators of the technology, I will say the more interesting applications will be able to be built.
I think we have still terrible user experience. Yeah, we from one inch side we try to improve it. Yesterday we announced our cross-chain swaps, what introduced seamless experience for cross-chain asset swaps. We user just create on one single order what is off-chain. Don't have to execute any transactions, and only professional executors taking care about the execution and also take all the risks from the user.
First, there's been a lot of focus on on what Web3 can do today, and that's basically transfer ownership of different things. But we have a larger vision, and that's that we can have complete applications online. And then you need to be able to store more data than what currently exists. So currently, usually data and processing is done outside of the blockchain. That makes it very hard to do the kind of Web2 applications and mainstream user applications. So that's one thing. The second thing is the user onboarding. So if I may explain a little bit what ChromaWay does. It's a relational blockchain. It's a combination between a traditional database and a blockchain. It means that we can store data, it's indexed, it's available, it's using the same technology it's been using for decades in the enterprise world, as well as building Web 2 and Web 1. So you can manage, all your social networks are built in this way, and basically everything in the rest of the world. So we are enabling more of the same programming model as being used in the outside of crypto so far. And we have no gas fees, because the application developer basically decides, pays for his D-app. And you can monetize with users in whatever way you want.
Ultimately, I think consumer products need to be edgy and exciting, otherwise they just won't catch on. And I think our industry has so much opportunity to build exciting consumer apps, but I think most companies in the space, they don't really know where it's going. My critical belief is that Coinbase and Binance have been very successful, but they don't really have a vision even for where crypto will be in 2030. What is the mass market experience that we want to give our friends and family in 2030? And I can say that because 10 years ago, when I got into crypto, crypto still looked the same as it does today. You log onto Coinbase, it's a list of coins with some numbers and data next to it. That's the same as it is today. And ordinary people trying to get into crypto in a bull market, right? They look at this, they don't know what any of these coins are, they can't relate to anything at all, and so it's no wonder that they quickly escape the industry again when the bull market's over, right?
So I think that there's not enough hooks, sustainable hooks for users to stay within consumer apps beyond the incentives. So I think you need to be basically solving real world problems. In our case, we're trying to build the most trusted and biggest social network in the world using Web3 technology and principles. So we've decided to tackle talent first, because at the end of the day, what you do is really half of who you are. And by focusing on talent first, which has the biggest misalignment of incentives in Web 2, with the most valuable data per user, but least amount of engagement, we can disrupt that first, and that's how we're going to build the next big social network.
Hyper-adoption comes from the access to distribution of token holders, users, right? Ethereum did a good job on DeFi, right? All this on-chain native finance, programmable finance was good. But now with all the L2s, right, the whole gas fee problem, interoperability problem, it gets to a level that liquidity gets very fragmented into all kinds of L2s. And the whole entire Ethereum market cap is small, right? Compared to Bitcoin, it's much bigger. So now what's possible and very exciting to explore in Bitcoin ecosystem, let's untap, let's say 10%, 20% existing Bitcoin market cap. With this Bitcoin verification, all this new type of native yield kind of infrastructure, we can get more liquidity onto DeFi protocols with Bitcoin as assets. And Bitcoin after ETF, right, after the halving, it's become much more adopted with institutions really taking this very seriously. We see so many institutional players have big, 9 figures, even 10 figures Bitcoin exposure now, right? So Bitcoin is going to be here to stay in the next 10 years, 20 years. People want to earn yield, right, with their Bitcoin assets. They don't want just sitting there in the last 15 years doing nothing except as payment. So when people are saying Bitcoin should have no use cases, it was just because it was not possible. This cycle, things are getting possible. Yeah, that's something we're working on.
I think we need more time. I think the industry has matured a lot over the years. There still is, in my opinion, there still is concern about a lot of fraud, a lot of theft, and just a lot of bad things. Crypto has had a bad reputation the last few years, and I think, if you look at it, it's because there's too much greed. Right, so I think from a pure technology perspective, I think Bitcoin is awesome. So this is why I dedicated my second half of my crypto career to making self-custody easy for regular people. The idea is I want more people to learn about Bitcoin, the benefits of owning that asset class as a way to save their money and also to protect their purchasing power and also to make money as an investment. But you have to keep it for the long term. So you're not just trading it day to day, but rather you're owning it, hodling it, investing it in the long term. And for that, you need to have self-custody. And that's the whole point of cryptocurrency is you have the ability to self-custody your digital assets.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we all come into this space very optimistic, thinking like we're going to create these beautiful products that are superior to any of the Web2 existing products. For me, one of the beautiful things on Web3 technology is that we can create freedom in these technologies. So we don't have to rely on huge companies owning our data and being reliant on them, making them rich and powerful while it's not necessary. So that's what Web3 enables. But unfortunately, it's not like a thing that sells to general customers. Like companies don't really care, users don't really care. So we need to come up with like a superior pitch to the whole world, like to traditional companies that is convincing beyond the freedom and open source element. So I think we need to mature more. Like it's going rapidly. Like now compared to 10 years ago, I think there is way more professionalities in the space and things are way more serious. There's also an increase in adoption, but we're not there yet. So it's I think being more professional, also wrapping our products in a way that people are familiar with needs to happen more and more. At Nosana, our software is still quite experimental. As we're just we've released our network a year ago and it's still in an early phase. So I think adoption should happen also from the ground up. So you start with smaller companies, maybe startups, maybe companies that also have an experimental nature. But we need to work up the ladder. So like next year we need to go like SMB and the next year go bigger. I think that's the way to do it.
I think the main thing right now is still a little bit of just credibility and trust. Even though within our space we like to talk about don't trust, verify, but there's a lot of trust as society that we need to have with one another. And so I think we're still on the back of what happened in 2022 with the Three Arrows Capital, with FTX. There's still a lot of skepticism about the crypto industry, about the players in our industry. So I think number one is we need to prove ourselves that we're trustworthy, that we're doing things not just to make a quick buck, but we're actually serving humanity. That's the first thing. And then number two is that it takes a lot of time for this new asset class, for society to figure out what it's actually worth. So that's why we started an exchange, so that buyers and sellers can determine what the price is. And over time, as I think we'll see a decline in traditional financial markets with fiat currency, we'll see a rise with cryptocurrency, but it really needs to serve humanity's needs. It can't just be this cool technological thing. So it's a cultural shift that's required that will take time.
Yeah, so firstly is simplicity, trying to make things really easy for people to adopt any form of tokenization in Web3. In particular for football, we're looking at how fans engage with their football clubs, with football players, with their communities, how they get rewarded, where they spend their money. All these things can be made really easily with social logins, for example, using web browsers, not wallets, just making life really easy for football fans to engage with their club, with their favorite brands, with their favorite players, and to spend money accordingly. Not just that, but also to find ways to make some profit from their choices. So if football fans want to invest in certain players and they become even more successful, then they can be rewarded from those players' success.